Okay, I apologize for the bad lighting and also for my face because I have these red spots. But I wanted to film this regardless because I started and finished another danmei today. The danmei that I read is called President Isn't Mary Sue. It had just 38 pages, 5 chapters, was very, very short, and I want to talk about it just a little bit. First of all, I had a hard time deciding if I even want to count this as reading a book because it's 38 pages and it's the 1st of January today. And I literally just decided that I want to count every book I read this year properly and I want to try to read as much as possible. And I'm in a kind of reading slump at the moment, so this is, in a way, just a cheap solution to my goal of reading as much as possible because that was a very, very short read. So it feels like cheating. But at the same time, it was a book in my library and I read it. I'm deciding to count it. I'm deciding to count any book that I'm reading this year, no matter the length. I mean, last year I read a book with over 1,000 pages, and it's like that's also an unusual length compared to the average book that is like 350 pages or something. Like, that's also an outlier in the length. Anyway, now, talking about President Isn't Mary Sue. I went into this novel. I don't even know really what I expected because of how short it was, but I thought, like, I guess quick progression and probably a lot of over the top romance and a lot of maybe even messed up stuff happening, maybe sexual stuff happening right off the bat, something like that is what I was thinking. It's what I was thinking. But no, this novel on Novel Updates, the website that I don't even know if I got it from there or if I just saw it as an EPUB somewhere and downloaded it, but on Novel Updates on the site, it was listed as Shonen Ai. And I know these are outdated terms, so I don't like to use them to describe books myself. But Shonen Ai is essentially a term for a tamer version of yaoi, where it's common for there to be gay romance, but no sexual things. So, and I would say it hardly even qualified as a shonen ai in the end, because let me tell you about the plot of this 38-page book. It was basically about the main character who, I don't know how old he is actually, but he is an adult. He has multiple years of work experience with a company, but this company is essentially not leading him anywhere in his career. He's essentially completely underworked, and he kept holding on in this company and staying with them because he had the hope that something is gonna come from that, from staying with them. I think his boss was optimistic that they would somehow become super successful in the future, so he stayed with the company for a few years. But he decided to quit in the end and applied for a bigger company because he really looked up to the, I guess, CEO, to the top boss of that company, because he read an interview with this person and he thought this guy is absolutely gorgeously handsome. He looks incredibly competent and kind, basically just like a Mary Sue, right? And this is where the title of the danmei comes in. President Isn't Mary Sue. A Mary Sue, as you probably know, is It's essentially a term for an overpowered character that has no flaws to the point that it's comical, and it's like seen as a negative thing or like as a goofy thing for a character to be. And in this, like in the context of the story, the main character thought that the president of the company that he is applying to and that he starts working at is essentially the perfect man to a comical degree. And he had this admiration and almost like a fantasy of how it would be to work for this new company under this perfect boss. And then his fantasy of what work is like there and what the boss is like immediately gets shattered. On his first day in this new company, he is very chaotically taken into a translation job for some negotiations with a Japanese company. The main character is Chinese. Everyone there is Chinese, and they have to translate for a Japanese company for business negotiations. And the main character is like just thrown into this situation so chaotically, and he meets the president of the company for the first time there, and he swoons a little bit. Like, this is kind of where you have the shonen ai gay flavor coming in of the story, but it never actually goes much further than that. I'm gonna be spoiling the ending, even though I've, like, by summarizing as far as I have now, I've already said a lot of what happens in the book. Actually, it's probably like 40% because of how short it is, but let me summarize the rest and how the story goes and how it ends and why I think it barely even counts as shonen ai. Well, he gets bullied by the president for months. Like, he gets used as an errand boy. He is threatened. He is told to man up and not complain about the workload. And he is expected to kind of immediately, like, like, God, what's the word? Like, he's supposed to immediately be okay with his situation and adjust. And if he doesn't manage to, then, like, he he'll get fired or something, like and he's already getting bullied for the way he's dealing with the situation now. He gets bullied by his colleagues, and his boss, like the president of the company that he believed to be Mary Sue, is also extremely demanding, extremely harsh, and just a pain to be with as well, because the main character ends up getting promoted from just his translating duty to being the, what's it called, the assistant of the president of the company. And it's hell. Like, the main character describes he's overworked, he is so stressed, he doesn't like it, he's getting bullied by his colleagues. There's rumors being spread that that the main character just slept with the boss to get that position, and that's not true. um anyway, we skip a bunch of months, like we skip forward in time, and the main character has kind of like come to terms with his position. He has become a lot more, what's it called, acclimated, is that a word, to the work that he has to do, and he's okay with the workload now. He's not complaining anymore, and the bullying also got less, and he also found a badass way to deal with the rumors regarding him and the president by saying that people should just mind their own business, and either they get fired because they're not doing their work, or they just need to do their work, like mind your own business instead of spitting some bullshit rumors, you know? Anyway, now, then there is, like, towards the end, the main character gets sick, and suddenly the president of the company realizes how much he actually needs the main character as his assistant, because otherwise nothing gets done correctly. Like this guy is the only competent person in the company for the president, and as soon as he like falls away because of sickness, suddenly everything sucks. And the thing is, the main character was tasked, for example, with managing the files, with cleaning the office, arranging the president's schedule, even keeping track of his bathroom times and of his dinner and meals and everything. Which I feel like that's not what an assistant's duty should be, but okay. um, Anyway, and this is also one of these moments where you can tell, okay, it's giving shonen ai, it's giving gay flavor, but it's not really going there, if you know what I mean. Like, this is still just a bit parasocial, but still a business relationship, you know what I mean? And then the president visits the main character at home who is sick, and they spend some time together. And there was also, I forgot to mention another moment that happened earlier in the story, but it's okay. Basically, the main character and president used to be at odds with each other. They used to not like each other, especially the main character felt wronged, and he felt um, bullied by the president. But after spending a lot of time in the company and doing the work without complaining so much, he started getting used to the treatment and found a way to deal with it for himself, though he often speaks of wanting to quit the job or feeling like um, he's being taken advantage of, which I think personally he is. But yeah, the boss, the president, actually ends up offering him a house, like to live close to the president, which that's really weirdly parasocial, but I kind of understand what they're going with here, like the parasocial work relationship kind of turning so parasocial that it cycles into being yaoi, being gay, right? But the main character declines, and he's like, "Are you crazy? Like that costs so much, like to even buy or rent a place near that area. Like I don't make that much money in this company to be able to afford that." Which, like, fair enough. Fair enough. The story ends with the main character actually moving in, I think, um, in like the same building as the president, and now being involved in the president's everyday life very casually, and still serving as his assistant even in his private life, I think. But it's gotten a bit more peaceful between them, and the president isn't so much bullying him anymore, which yay. But they never kissed, they never really held hands, they never really confessed any romantic feelings or even ambiguous feelings, you know? Um, well, I guess it is a bit ambiguous, but it just feels like they're domestically kind of living together now. Like, of course, there's the whole work dynamic where it's like there's always this layer of there's one person superior and one person who is inferior. And if they kind of like, if the inferior person want to say no, that the boss could just make him have very dire consequences in his work life. Like, obviously, that layer is there, but it's also like they're never explicit about their feelings, and the ending is very ambiguous. Like, yes, they live together, but their dynamic is still the same as when they're at work, and they're never physically close to each other in any way that could be interpreted as romantic. And it's like, I don't know. Like, I understand it being labeled shonen ai, and I understand it like as like you could say this is a romance story, kind of, but also not really. I don't know. Anyway, I would say I didn't like this book too much. Like, there was so little happening, and it all felt very, well, not personally relatable to me because I don't work in a company like that, but it felt so close to an everyday business setting, and there was nothing really crazy that happened, and no like explicit romance either, so it felt very mundane of a read. And especially because in the end there was no real conclusion. It was like, okay, they live together now, but that's kind of it. There's no emotional conclusion. Like, they get along now, and before they didn't. And wait, I think I have to explain this before I finish with my small book review, I guess. The whole thing about President Isn't a Mary Sue, like the title of the book, is because the expectation of the main character at the beginning of the book, upon seeing these interviews, was that the president is basically like a Mary Sue. He's a perfect man. Not only is he really handsome, he's also extremely competent and extremely nice and kind and everything. And I think you can read into it a little bit and say that the main character was attracted to the president, but it's never actually outright stated. But throughout the book and throughout the middle and ending, especially, the expectation is not only subverted about the boss, that he isn't this perfect person that is kind and nice. He's rather actually a bully and someone who kind of works his subordinates to the bone. I don't even know how to describe it correctly. They make a few jokes about the boss really not being a Mary Sue type of character, and then the boss, like, once he realizes that there is a joke being made about him not being a Mary Sue, he tries to play into it and be like, I can buy this entire mountain for you. Is that Mary Sue enough for you? And it's like, I don't know, it's a little bit cheeky with it towards the ending. But he really, I guess the title is right. He really isn't a Mary Sue character. He is wildly unlikable, in my opinion. I think that if any person that I know of in real life had asked me what to do if they were in the main character's situation, I would have said, quit your job instantly. Your boss is taking advantage of your capabilities and you're not getting paid enough. But because it's a book, I can forgive that it had such a, I don't know if mellow is the right word to describe it, but it had such a, like, almost artificially peaceful conclusion. Like, if this happened to an ordinary person in real life, I would advise them, like I said, to quit instantly. But the main character was fine with it and he adjusted to it, which, like, I guess if it makes him happy, then let him work there and stay under this boss. Like, if he actually is happy in that situation and he's fine with it, then what am I supposed to say? But yeah, don't replicate this in real life. Like, there were no problematic tropes in this book, no non consensual whatever, but it was very clear that the main character was taken advantage of in terms of his work capabilities, and that his boss was really, really working him to the bone. And he was bullied, and there was also a scene. Oh my god, I need to mention this as well. There was a scene where he actually complained about getting harassed at work, and his boss was just like, you need to man up. Why are you letting these people, like, fuck you up? Like, just ignore it. Like, what do you mean that's stopping you from working? Just do your job. And it's like, you would not give that type of advice to someone in real life. If your boss said this to you, then you should quit your job immediately and search a workplace that actually respects you. And Another thing that I have to complain about this novel with, I don't know if it was the translation or if the original text also included this, but they said the R slur multiple times. And I personally don't really have much of an issue with that, but it did feel a bit uncomfortable to read. Like, it felt kind of insensitive that whenever they were essentially trying to say, "Are you stupid?" they would say, "Are you, you know?" And I didn't like that, but it is what it is. Yeah, if I had to rate this book, I honestly wouldn't know what to rate it. I casually gave it a 3 out of 5 for my own library app, but it would probably be closer to like a 2 or a 2.5 if I think about it realistically, because while it wasn't terrible, it was really not great, especially because it was a short read. I don't know. I feel like the scenes that they chose to go with for this very short, limited story were just not it. They could have done more with that, and the time skips, I think they skipped like forward in time 2 or 3 times. It just felt like lazy storytelling. Like, if you want to write a conclusive story about these two people and how they come to grow fond of each other, I think you really need more than just three key events to make their development believable. Like, yes, having key events really did help the story not feel as empty and as jumping from one place to another, kind of like unnaturally. Like, the events actually gave it some, like, what's it called? Like, it was coherent in a way, but it was just way too short for there to be anything of substance, I think. Also, especially because they never developed any sort of romance or any sort of like explicit thing to kind of set their relationship apart properly from their work boundaries, from their work relationship. That kind of bothered me. But in the end, I guess you could still argue, okay, maybe that was the intent, to kind of play with what counts as work and what counts as private, and is that still valid if it developed because of their work relationship or whatever. I don't know. Um, yeah, all in all, I would say not a waste of time, because at least it got me to read again. I was feeling kind of hopeless for my reading progress because I really wanted to read something, but I couldn't find anything that I wanted to read. Then I saw how little pages this book had, and I thought, I can read that. I can read that under an hour. And so I did. So I'm glad that it was able to serve that purpose for me. But the story in itself, I would not necessarily recommend anyone to go out of their way to read it. It was a little bit goofy, but it never actually made me laugh much or think about the characters in any deeper way, especially because the president was not a very likable person.